Hello, beautiful souls. It's David Ault, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the gathering. This is part two of a four-part series, and I'm calling it Back to Spiritual Basics with a Twist. And the source material for these four parts is The Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes. I have spent more than half my life with this book as both a student and a teacher, and continue to be both student and teacher. And there are these preambles in the beginning of this text that many spiritual centers around the world use as a sort of refresher course in the beginning of the year. And we're doing the same thing. The twist part is me admitting to you that even after all of this time spent with this material, I'm still learning. I'm still a student, and I am still willing to lean in with beginner's mind to look back at this material and then reveal to you the additional understandings that I am gaining in this infinite journey. So, part one was our feeble attempt in defining God. And I appreciate that starting point because it was the first time that I heard the non-gendered reference of God. Ernest Holmes calls it the thing itself. Feels rather cold and sterile, but it really is accurate to me. I grew into accepting and appreciating that term because it was showing me that I was attaching and holding on to a form of separation that had long been ingrained in my upbringing. God separate from me, God as deity. So to call it the thing itself was forcing me to begin to think of God as source, as life force, as the thing that is all permeating in existence. And part two is our feeble attempt at trying to explain how it works, how God works, how the thing itself works, which makes me smile because it's you and I in our finite nature trying to explain and discuss things that are infinite. But we have to start somewhere. And even Ernest Holmes, in the part two of these preambles, he says that the thing then works for us by working through us and is us always. It cannot work for us in any other way. So it works for us by working through us and is us. What is he saying? He's saying that we are absorbed in life force. We are absorbed in God. And that which is God, the infinite nature of God, is revealed through us only by working through us. And how does it do that? Well, you and I have to get up and we have to go and walk into the seeming finite constancy of duality of being human and prove the infinite nature of God by our actions, by our showing up, by our willing to defy a blind acceptance. And therefore, the twist part for me was, what is that blind acceptance? And I've come to understand that as mythology. And I'm not really sure that we all understand just how much we are influenced by blind acceptance of mythology. I've had a wonderful mentor and has become a friend after many years. And he's a African-American elder. And he said to me years ago that 200 years from now, the mythology of who Martin Luther King Jr. will become will be nothing in terms of the reality of the man. And then he paused and he smiled and he said, not even 200 years now. The mythology of what is being touted as Martin Luther King Jr. is so far removed from the reality of the man. And it doesn't take anything away from the magnificence of that man and what he provided. But it shows that what we do is we create mythology. We we pedestalize people, and it's a form of separation. In other words, we look at these things and we call them lofty or unattainable, almost in a way to provide an excuse by not going out and proving the thing itself by us, because we think or we are believing a mythology that says we can't. So blind acceptance of mythology for me is the twist that I have continued to self-examine to see where I do that, and to also watch the way that it plays itself out in the human condition. One of the ways it does that is through social media. You see people who blindly share things. They're sharing blindly these things that are mythological or perhaps have no basis in truth whatsoever. And they're not doing what is required of them to prove what it is that at first attracted them to it by doing their own research, by going through and proving something before just blindly sharing it. It's kind of a crude form of that, but it's still in the same vein. We think about people and saints and sages and holy people and sadhus and famous people and celebrities, and we create this mythology around them. It's not all bad, because something in that part may be couched in inspiration. You're a singer and you see an amazing famous singer and you go, wow, and you're inspired by all the things that they do. But be careful that you don't in mind then think that you are incapable of also tapping into the thing that inspired them. In other words, take that and then apply it to yourself. Don't let inspiration then just be something that you sit back and you languish in, but use the inspired action to create a personal exploration within yourself. Let inspiration be your influence. And that's very much what Ernest Holmes is talking about. The way that the infinite works is by you going and proving it through your life. Not by big, grandiose things that make headlines, but by the simple day-to-day practices where you keep busting through illusion. You keep busting through the belief systems of your culture or your family. You keep busting through the accepted limitation of your ancestral lineage, and you keep proving and proving the infinite nature of the thing itself by you, by you. Sometimes quiet, sometimes public. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you become so accepting and willing to be used by that infinite nature that you don't languish very much anymore in fear or doubt or what's going to happen to me or even human death. It's like none of those things are relevant. What's relevant is I have a brand new day. How will I prove the thing itself? How will I show the way that it works? I'm going to show it by the way in which I show up. And that's it. One of my first pieces of the science of mind that I actually memorized is in this section, this Part-2 section. And Ernest Holmes wrote, "This original life is infinite." That one little tiny sentence set off a chain reaction in me to meditate on the word infinite. And it's a practice that I continue to go back to time and time again. What does infinite mean? So rather than intellectualizing it or just passing it over by reading it, how can I prove that this original life, the life force, the thing itself, is infinite? That I am absorbed in infinite potentiality or infinite possibility of expressing it. How will I do that? This original life is infinite. He says, it's good. It is filled with peace. How am I going to know that? How am I going to know that unless I march into the seeming lack of peace to be able to touch or sit at the feet of peace and allow it to be a part of me. It is of the essence of purity. It is the ultimate of intelligence. It is power. It is law, lawful. It's lawful. It is life. It is in us, in that inner sanctuary of our own nature, hidden perhaps from objective gaze, hidden from our ability to see. And this is the part that's in quotations, nestles the seed perfection. He borrowed that piece from Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. Hidden perhaps from objective gaze, and I will say not just perhaps, but almost always, our inability to see. Nestled inside our inability to see is this seed called perfection. Isn't that amazing? That's how it works. That's how it works as we continue to faithfully want to penetrate through our self-imposed blindness, our accepted perceptions. That's how it works. That's how it works. And so I often refer to something that I wrote years ago, and that's there will always be fertile soil. So that's my interpretation of the infinite life. There will always be fertile soil. There will always be the genius seed inside you. Combine the two. That's been a motivational sort of mantra that I created for myself long ago, and it continues to work to this day. And I am nowhere finished in terms of exploring that and using that soil. There will always be fertile soil. Don't be suppressed by blind acceptance of mythology and then thinking that because you're holding on to this idea that you can't or you're not enough or it's too late, all that stuff, which has no truth whatsoever, remember, infinite, then that blind acceptance to mythology will just have you languish on the couch and give up. But there will always be fertile soil. There will always be, up until our last breath, the genius seed inside of us. Combine the two. So nestled inside you is the seed of perfection. Got this infinite soil. And the way that something is going to grow from that is by combining the two. So that is the message of part 2, the way that it works. The way that the thing itself works, it works by means of you. And the twist is examine the mythology that you have blindly accepted and the way in which that mythology influences your day-to-day actions, the way that it influences the noise in your mind. Set it aside, prove it for yourself, and let's do this together. And so it is. Much love.